Hello, beautiful people, and welcome back to another episode of the Where in the World podcast on YouTube and whereintheworldismatt.com. I'm Matt, and thank you so much for joining me again this month. This time around, we have another awesome interview with a Peace Corps Armenia volunteer, and we are going to be talking about things that you bring with you on every trip. Now, I think this is such an awesome topic of conversation because it can be so different for everyone, and it can really depend on what type of traveling you're doing. So we're gonna get to hear about my guest today and the actually two items that he always brings with him on every trip, and I think it speaks so much to his character and to him as an individual. So I can't wait for us to get to that interview. But before that, as usual, I want to give you guys a bit of an update on, what have I been up to this past month? How are things going here in Armenia? Just so that you guys can kind of keep informed with what I'm doing personally. So, if you remember last month, I had talked about how I was finishing up writing a grant for my community's dance school, which I go to twice a week, teach tap dance and hip hop. And the tap dance program is actually the very first one in country. So we're actually trying to get some grant funding to get that to be a permanent program after I leave, which is awesome because it will be the very first tap dance program in the entire country. So for me to be a part of something like that and so unique, I'm absolutely thrilled. And I'm happy to say that we got pre-approval on the grant. Now, what that means is overall, the grant concept was approved, but there were some minor things that we needed to fix in regards to our budget, or just some clarification on how we were going to implement some of the different smaller things going on within the project. But that was good news. I actually just finished yesterday submitting the grant, so now we're just in the waiting process to see if funding comes through, and if it does, in April, I should have more update about us starting to do that project. So I'm really excited for that to happen. Also, with it being March, you'd think winter's starting to come to an end, and I totally thought that, and I was fooled, probably like a lot of other people. But as I'm learning here in Armenia, there's actually only two seasons. You have summer, and then you have winter. And where spring and fall should be, those are just kind of our pass-through times. They go for a couple weeks where the weather isn't quite as warm or quite as cold. And it's just transitioning to the next season because there was no snow on the ground, hardly at all, yesterday at my site. And now today it's been an absolute blizzard for the last 12 hours. So we have so much snow that has come back, and that's probably a little bit of payback because a lot of my family and friends who live in the Midwest have been going through probably one of the worst, if not the worst, winter of their entire lives. So this is probably a little bit of payback to the fact that I haven't had to deal with that this year. But with that being said, our winter, yeah, it's cold, but it has been nowhere as severe as it has been back in the States. So I'm pretty thankful for that. Also, the thing that I'm most excited to tell you guys about is I'm coming into my second year now of being here in Armenia, or I should say finishing my first year here in Armenia and starting year 2. And I've recently been selected to be a resource volunteer for the new incoming volunteers, which I'm super excited about because I get to talk about living with host families, kind of the different cultural expectations, and how to keep like your true identity, and some of those things that you really cherish, keeping that to yourself, and then also being able to share that with a host family. So I'm really excited to be able to have that experience, and I get to do that within the first couple of days that our new volunteers arrive here in the coming weeks. So that will be one of the first things that they get to hear and discuss, and I'm super happy that I get to be a part of that conversation. With that being said, this month I'm actually starting the process of moving out from my host family. And the reason for that is because I wanted a couple different things. I wanted to find a little bit more independence within myself, start to regain, as I said, some of those things that I really cherish and hold close to me, like being independent and cooking for myself, cleaning for myself. And I've kind of lost that during this first year here in country. And I really would love to regain that during year 2, while also taking on some of the added challenges that comes with living by yourself, especially when you're living abroad. I'm sure anyone who's either lived abroad for a long period of time or has sought out living on their own, in any given situation, can tell you it's completely different, especially when you're doing it abroad. It's nowhere near the same thing from back home. The living quality, the houses, the apartments, some of the amenities aren't going to be the same. But it's an awesome opportunity for me, like I said, to regain some of that independence and to start, building my life as an individual within my community, which I'm really excited about. I haven't found a place yet, nor have I even started looking, but it is something that I have brought up to my host family. I've talked about it with my counterpart, and we're going to begin that process now for me to see if there is a place within my community for me to live. And the cool thing is that my host family has been totally supportive. They knew maybe at some point I would want to pursue this, and they have been more than happy for me. Especially, the relationship that we've built this last year has been incredible. And I'm so thankful for that relationship and to continue to build those relationships within my own host family here. And to find my own independence. So being able to kind of step back, start doing things that are a bit more normal for me on an everyday basis, while also continuing to develop that relationship with this family. I think it's just going to make me so much more happier, make my work more fruitful, and overall just give me kind of a better quality of life here in Armenia. So, like I said, I can't stress enough, I'm super excited about that process starting and kind of seeing where it leads me. So like I said, this week we are talking about things that you bring with you on every trip. And that can be different depending on what type of traveling you're doing. And the guy that I sit down with today, I'm laughing because I'm just replaying the interview in my head, and it was so funny. But the guy I sit down with today, he's such a cool guy. He has a very unique item or items that he brings with him on every trip. And I think he's going to, especially if there's people out there who are interested in serving the Peace Corps, I think he's going to give an awesome example of what it's like living and working abroad and taking on some of those challenges. So thank you so much again for joining me for another Where in the World podcast. Sit back, relax, and thanks for letting us into your ears. All right, today I'm joined by Peace Corps volunteer Trevor Brown. No, his name's just Trevor Brown. Bay is because we love him so much. But we got Trevor Brown, Peace Corps volunteer, Alabama native, and bluegrass music lover. Oh, I'm so excited for this interview, Trevor. And Troy University football enthusiast. How's it going today, Trev? How we feeling?
I'm pretty good, man. Appreciate you having me.
We already got him laughing, which is a good sign. So this should be a really eventful interview, I would think. So as I mentioned a little bit earlier in the podcast, today we're talking about things you bring on every trip. And I'm so glad that Trevor's agreed to do this one because he's got probably, at least a lot of the people I know, they're going to find this as a super interesting item that he brings. Because like, how the heck does he fit it with all this stuff? And we're going to have a really funny story about that. But to start, I want to get a good background, paint a fun picture of who is Trevor Brown. So, Trevor, you grew up in the South in Alabama, which I think is awesome. And I know the listeners are going to absolutely love hearing what was life like growing up in Alabama.
Just about as what you'd expect it, to be honest with you. Me and grew up with guns and accents and all, just all the stereotypes that one could imagine, both good and bad. Sweet tea is like an essential in the household. We were raised on hunting and fishing and stuff like that. Although in my case, it wasn't as exaggerated as you might imagine it. But yeah, football parties, everything else, fried food. Now, I think in my particular case, we've been pretty interested. It's been pretty interesting because we were a military family. We moved all over the place. We even had a short spell in Alaska, actually. Maybe that's why I'm adapting so well to Armenia. I'm in one of the coldest parts of the country, and yeah.
So if anyone who listened to the first episode remembers, we had Alex on from Alaska. So they can definitely, they already kind of have a picture of what Alaska's like. You mentioned fried food. So I'm really interested to hear, like, what were some traditional, like, Alabama foods that your mom would cook? And what's some really good, like, fried home cooking?
God bless my mama, first of all. She's a really good cook. Not only would she make fried food, but she was also really good at making them casseroles, although I wouldn't appreciate it till later. She really loved making like sausage casserole and, especially around the holidays, green bean casserole, which that stuff was like slap your grandma good. I loved it. And Matthew's laughing at me right now. And also, just standard things that you eat while you're down there, especially in the summer. We love to grill things, but we also love to get some pulled pork. The biggest difference between us and y'all is that barbecue for us is not a verb, it's a noun. We eat barbecue. We don't barbecue things. Barbecue for us is dirty rice and pulled pork and all that other stuff. So it's pretty... food from where I'm from, and I didn't really know the difference until I worked up in New York for like 2 months. Just how pronounced the difference was, because I was talking about what I would eat back at home, and people were kind of bewildered by it. Yeah, we do love our fried food. You go to a festival and you find fried Twinkies and fried Oreos and stuff like that. Now this could be an occurrence somewhere else, but it's very noted in Alabama, especially we have the chocolate festival and like the music festivals and shrimp festivals and stuff like that. So we do love to fry our stuff, funnel cake, so on.
So this might come as a surprise, but a lot of this actually sounds familiar to me from Iowa, because pulled pork sandwiches, we live and die off of that in Iowa. We do love our fried food, and especially the state fair. When you're mentioning like the Iowa State Fair, if people don't know, is like, it's seriously like the most attended and biggest state fair in the U.S. And the biggest thing is every year we always have the most absurd type of fried food. So it's like fried Twinkies, fried like entire apple pies that are completely dipped in. And like, seriously, my favorite one, I always thought this would be a good idea, is I always thought like if I just want to do a quick like job at the state fair, it would be bringing a fryer to the state fair and then just like slapping like a $5 fee on it and be like, bring your own stuff and I'll fry it. And it could, because people have an obsession with frying stuff.
I'm actually pretty sure I've seen that somewhere, and I think I've seen like a commercial for that, although it may have been a parody. I wouldn't be surprised if people did do that back where I'm from, like, you bring it, I fry it. You also see a lot of these at tailgating events too for football games, because where I'm from, we love football. And I don't know, I guess I should have, we were talking about food, I guess I should have mentioned also like what am I thinking? Like, we love crock pot stuff, but also cast iron stuff too. Y'all, don't know if y'all do that. We love our jambalaya and gumbo. That's Louisiana stuff, but we still add that to our cuisine. Especially in tailgating season, bringing all that kind of stuff, and fried food, of course, festival food, finger food. It's all good.
What is it? KFC? Is it KFC finger looking good? Finger. I'm gonna master my southern voice by the end of this interview. Um, so I know a lot of people who think of the South always think of the Southernisms, and that's such a unique part of the Southern culture because you have all these to the rest of the U.S. it's like these like weird obscure ways of like expressing yourself, but to people who live in the South, you're like, it's normal, right? It's so. Can we get an example and like can you give like the actual like literary meaning behind maybe like one or two different Southernisms? Maybe they're your favorite.
I reckon for any listener, you have your essential ones. Like the most basic one you'll need to know if you ever like travel down below the Mason-Dixon line is the "Bless Your Heart." Now, we get paired for this one a lot, and you could use this three different ways. Although the first way is the most common way. If someone says "Bless your heart" to you, that means you're a dumbass. Probably. You probably did something, and they're like, "Oh, sweetheart, bless your heart." It can be sometimes it can be sincere. You hear about someone whose kid is sick, and the mom's fretting over it. Oh, bless her heart, and stuff like that. I think I said there's three ways, but there's two. I pretty much just summarized it. Let me think. It's very hot where I'm from. We don't ever see snow. It's very or ice or anything like that. The only time you see ice is in a cup of iced tea. So it's very humid, especially in Alabama, and we use various expressions for that. Like it's hotter than X. Personally, my favorite. Now, no one actually says a lot of these nowadays. It's more for the older folk, but it's hotter than like a jackass's ass in the pepper patch, or it's. I'm trying to think of another one. Matt's got me distracted because he's laughing right now. Hotter than two possums humping in a wool sock is a big one. Or it's hot as Satan's balls or something like that. I don't know. It's hot. Now here, of course, over in Armenia, I find myself using those lists because, I'm in one of the more higher parts of Armenia. I'm not going to say the coldest because I know some other Peace Corps volunteers will get heated over that. Like, hey, we're colder than y'all are. But here, I think I've said a few times, just to my counterpart to make him laugh, like, oh, it's colder than a witch's city face down in the snow with a brass bra in Washington or something like that. I don't know. But we have a lot of colorful ways of expressing how we feel about the weather. So I'm trying to think of other things. Oh, stupid people. Let me think. Like she felt that's ugly. Hold on, I'm trying to think of something stupid. One fry short of a Happy Meal. Her elevator don't quite reach the top. Stuff like that. I don't know. Southerners, I've noticed Southerners. There's a very few of us that are very blunt when we want to talk about how we feel about the other people. We're very passive about it, like the whole "bless your heart" thing. If you ain't from here, you think, oh, they're being so nice to me. But if you're from the South, they're calling you an idiot.
So you mentioned Armenia and living over here with the Peace Corps. Before we get to that, I want to go back just a little bit. You mentioned living in New York, and I think that's the one that's like gonna blow some people's mind. Is like this guy from Alabama moving or like going to New York to work. And can you kind of go over what brought you to New York and like what were you doing in New York?
Yeah, so my family has had a long history with like a high school exchange company, which, just a short little aside on that's been pretty fun itself, having exchange students come and live with us in Alabama. You have some students that are pretty cool about it. They want to wear like the boots and wear like the belt and like the plaid shirts and whatnot, and even like, pick a football team because if you're from Alabama, you're either Auburn, Alabama, or nothing. And we have like the people that try to impersonate our accents. Like we had like a few like really good students that really appreciated everything that we did and tried to like take it back home with them, whether it be like Norway or Germany or Netherlands. Now this company that we work with, they have a camp up in New York City. It's just right outside of Manhattan, but we do a lot of work in Manhattan as well. And let me gather my thoughts here. They come in right before they are sent to their host families in America. They come in and we kind of break it down for them, depending on what area of the USA they're going to. In my case, Southeast. We give them expectations on school life, community life, family life, general society, and stuff like that. So, of course, I was over the Southeast, which was like Georgia, Tennessee, Kentucky, Alabama, Mississippi, Louisiana, Arkansas, and so on. and very, very few times Texas, although that's like an entity of its own. So what I did was I had students from all over like Europe and some parts of Asia come in, and they stay around for, let's see, they like fly in, and we do like a day of classwork, not classwork, but like meeting, talking about expectations, and by the way, you're gonna have a curfew. By the way, there's teams at your school. By the way, there's this and that and this and that. By the way, prepare to gain like 25 pounds, like a bunch of stuff like that. And then on the third day, we take them on a tour through Manhattan, which the tour was already made, and we just had to follow the route. And it would include things like Central Park, Trump Tower, Times Square, Grand Central Station, and so on. And it was fun. And then on the days off, we'd do planning, setting up, and then we'd also have like a free day to like go and do whatever we want. Of course, there's a bunch of us from all across the country coming in, so we get to go to Manhattan and explore and do whatever we want. And of course, I did. I went to every single tea house in Manhattan. That was my goal. I love tea. But I can tell you for a fact, that's when I really learned I hate big cities. Because while I'm not from exactly the sticks of Alabama, I'm from like a small town up in like northeastern Alabama. Places like even Birmingham, Alabama's capital, which is, by some comparisons, not that big. I struggle with that one. I struggle with New York City. I hate Atlanta with a passion. Sorry for people from Atlanta. But New York City, I can say this about New York City. Anything you want to find there, you'll find it. But 2 months there is a little too long for me. I got pretty sick of it after a while. Everything's too expensive and it's too big. That's about it.
What was like the biggest difference between Alabama and New York? Like, why you mentioned you didn't like it? Like, why?
Now don't get me wrong, it's a cool city. I don't want to say I disliked it, because of a certain reason. It was more I was burnt out on it, and it was just kind of complex to navigate it. I think that one of the most notable things, like the most notable differences about between New York and Alabama was people were pretty quick to guess where I was from when they first heard me talk. I think I'd go and order like a pretzel or whatever, and I'd say, I'd like a pretzel, please. And then they would be like, where are you from? And I'm saying, oh, I'm from Alabama. Alabama, you're far away from home, without the accent. And I was like, yeah, what are you doing up here? I work up here. Oh. I don't know. I guess I don't know. I figured most Americans have visited New York. Tourists to people in Manhattan would be unusual, especially like the American variety. But every time I'd go somewhere, every time I go to a restaurant or like a tea spot or whatever, they'd be like, "Where are you from?" Like coffee. But really, like I just don't like big cities that much. Like if I don't mind visiting a big city, but spending 2 months in Manhattan of all places tends to burn you out relatively quickly, especially if you're not used to like the rush and the loud noises and all the lights and like all the people. So like I said, even Birmingham, Alabama, I did my internship there, and I think the population's close to like over like a few 100,000 people, and even with that, I hated it.
Well, you're surely out of the big city, being here in Armenia now, and you don't have to worry about that because you're in a quote unquote a city in Armenian standards. We're doing air quotes over here, by the way. It's a town, but you're in Gavar, which is the capital of the Mars or the province that you and I both live in, and I'm interested to hear about like how is life going in Peace Corps for you so far?
I'll tell you what, Gekarkunik province is pretty cool. I feel pretty blessed just to be here because when I came to Peace Corps, I was expecting different. I really wanted different. Really wanted like a different lifestyle, different language, different setting, just in general. And I feel like I got that and some when I got here. My motivation, I guess I'll start from the beginning. My motivation for joining Peace Corps was because I've been exposed to international cultures all my life. Well, not all my life, but all my like mature life with our exchange students and all that and whatnot. And the opportunity to finally be the one going abroad and not only being hosted, but just being present and adapting to like a language and a culture was definitely like a long-term goal I wanted that I had back in the day, and just to be here is like such a blessing in itself. I love languages. I love learning languages. I originally studied American Sign Language in college, and then I grew up speaking German, and so the idea of coming here and actually using the language every day, like living in a society where the language is actually used and not just used when it's convenient, was definitely a very big like dream I had. So Gmars, as he mentioned, I live in Gavar, which is the capital of this Mars. It's the largest Mars because of like the huge lake we have. We have the largest lake in the region, but actually the population's not that high. So actually, like, it kind of fulfilled some of the feelings I had back home, like small town feel, sort of. I appreciate that. Gavar's population's about, like, maybe by itself without considering like the consolidated villages, is about probably 15,000, I'd reckon. So it definitely is kind of familiar just on how people are. It's very conservative here. It's there's just like where I'm from back in America, they have their own dialect here called Gavar Barbar. Matter of fact, Gavar's not even called Gavar by these people. They call it Kavar. And it's pretty cool. Yeah, it definitely adds like a unique taste to Armenia. Armenia is so small, but there's such a awesome diversity here, just within its people. Despite the 99.9% like homogenous culture and like population, there's different traditions, different customs here. We have the best baklava in the country, which having that was not something I anticipated, and I've taken too much power over that. But being around here in Gavar, especially, it's had its ups and downs. It's one of the colder spots of Armenia. I think I mentioned that earlier. We're really high in elevation. Matter of fact, when I first got here, it was definitely an adjustment just for me to breathe here, because the air is so much thinner up here. I was sick for almost like a month and a half straight. I was thinking like, oh man, they're probably gonna make me change sites or whatever, because I've heard that Peace Corps like considers doing that if you're having difficulty adjusting, like health wise, and I was worried about that because I do like Gavar. But luckily I overcame it, and now I'm just fighting the cold because, like I said earlier, Alabama does not get snow, only on very rare occasions. And here, to give you an example, yesterday I was walking in snow, like hiking with some friends, and we were in knee deep snow, which that was so new to me, just so bewildering to me. Like, oh man, I never thought I'd be doing this. Like, came back and my pants were frozen. That's definitely an unusual one, but just the cold and everything in general, I did get what I wanted, and there's still some familiarity about it, and that's pretty good for me personally.
So, I'm really interested to hear like what is some of the work that you've done thus far here in Peace Corps. You've mentioned that in college you were studying American Sign Language, and I know you've been able to kind of take that passion of yours and incorporate it a little bit into your service. So can we talk a little bit about the work that you're doing here in Gavar?
I do love my work here. I work with a children's rehab center, and it's like younger children that have disabilities or some developmental delays. And then my other org is focused on like community volunteerism. And then, I do a little less work with them just because they're pretty they got everything pretty set up. But with the children disability org, it's a blessing because you get to work with these kids every day. I've not really had much opportunity to use my sign language here. I do have like some textbooks on Armenian Sign Language that I've gotten to use a little bit. Ironically, not around Gavar though. There's a deaf population in Yerevan, and I've got to interact with them a little bit. They're right by the hostel I usually stay at, so that's a pretty cool experience. But here, working with the kids here is pretty amazing. What I'm trying to do nowadays is work with. We're trying to celebrate both Armenian and American holidays. Like upcoming is on the 14th is Valentine's Day, but they also celebrate Saint Sarkis Day on I think the 16th. And they're officially like counterparts, I believe. Like they're supposed to be like the same saint, I think, just in different translation. I might be wrong on that. Don't look me up on that. But for example, on that holiday, we're going to like talk about the differences between the two holidays and also celebrate both traditions in one. So definitely looking forward to that. We try to celebrate the holidays. I'm also trying to help the therapist a bit because we have physical therapy, speech language pathology, and then like occupational therapy. And with the occupational therapist, we've been working on a project recently where we like make a board that has several tools on it, like doorknobs, light switches, like little locks and stuff like that that are used for your hands. It's for the kids to help develop and practice their fine motor skills. So definitely looking, we're working on that. It's almost done, luckily. Can't wait to implement it, see how effective it is. Currently writing a grant. I hate numbers, so this grant's been the death of me so far. But I'm pretty excited about if we do get it, how it'll affect us because we're trying to get sand therapy installed in the org. And what this will enable the kids to do is also use their artistic skills, some to kind of cope with their some stress and negativity and anger and aggressiveness. And they'll be able to like draw on the sand and also like practice their like hand skills and finger skills. And we're definitely looking forward to getting that put in. I think it'll be like a really good outlet for the children, especially because a rehab center is not exactly the most fun place for a kid to be, especially at the ages we have them at. So I'm definitely very excited to have them get creative. I try to sate that creativity a little bit with like arts and crafts like God's Eyes and dream catchers and whatnot. But definitely I'm excited for the future of this org. Like every other volunteer, probably I teach English as well. In fact, I've been working on like a new curriculum lately and looking to add like new games and all that stuff. And then I feel like I'm missing something. We have bunnies. If no one's eaten them already, we have like little therapy bunnies. I'm talking about myself, of course. And it's been pretty cool. Of course, kids here are a little less exposed to animals, honestly. So even bunnies, we consider these things to be cute. Some kids consider them like little nightmares. We've been adding those in for kids to be able to play with and to be able to pet, kind of get over some like surface sensitivities. And that part has probably been very, on my part, I never expected that part, like the animal treatment and whatnot. I thought that was so cool. I got to like put up like a poll on Facebook and have them like name the bunnies and whatnot, which were, oh crap, I think it was Bonnie and not Bonnie and Clyde. I'm trying to remember. It'll come back to me later, but yeah. So that's one org, and then with the other org, I've been trying to. There's a really popular thing called American Corner here in Armenia, which provides resources for those that want to learn English and maybe have more access to American culture. And it's a project funded by the embassy, the U.S. Embassy. However, it's been relatively tough to kind of get that going because apparently the embassy is not opening those right now, and that was like my big bet right there. So we're doing like an English space because I work with the college here and they have like an English program, and we're trying to find more effective ways for them to learn English. And also we're trying to find a way to make Navarre more touristy because, as I mentioned earlier, this other organization is all about volunteerism for like out of the community. So the work there is still being developed, but other than that, both my assignments here are very good. I also have some work with some committees. I work with GROW, which is like an environmental summer camp, as a curriculum writer. And then I also work with NICE, which that's kind of going underway right now, but I'm happy to be involved with a thing that advocates for kids with disabilities. And so on. Yeah.
So from Alabama to Alaska to New York to Armenia, like that's a very wide range variety of travel. Getting towards our topic of discussion this time, I understand that, and I mentioned this earlier, and I think it's really interesting that you always bring, as do many people, we always have like something that is of significance to us, that we like to bring to us. Maybe it's something that reminds us of home. Maybe it's something that's close to our hearts. So like, for example, whenever I travel and people think it's funny, I always bring my tap shoes. Because people who know me, I love to tap dance, and that's a part of my culture from back in the States that I love to share with people from around the world. They always think it's so interesting. So I'm really interested, Trevor. What is the item that you bring with you, like anywhere you go?
Honestly, when we were kind of prepping for this, I had no idea. It took me a while to think about it because I guess I don't realize what I do bring with me, even like by habit. But I've come to realize, like, definitely, like, every time I go out somewhere when I'm leaving the apartment, definitely there's always a rosary in my pocket. I love to carry that with me. It's definitely like something that means a lot to me on like a spiritual and personal level. And I guess Matt, when we were prepping for this earlier, he mentioned the Bible because we did a huge hike together back in October, and I guess it's crazy because it was a Bible. I brought like a Bible with me, and when you're backpacking and going like camping and whatnot, you're very conservative of your space. Yeah, I chose to bring a huge book with me, so um, I don't know. Last year I had a goal of reading the Bible cover to cover, and I mostly got through that. And then I lent it to a person who was wanting to read it in English, and then he ended up leaving the country with it. So it ain't no thing but chicken wing. It's all about sharing, I guess. But definitely with me, I guess it's more what you'd consider like spiritual items. Even when I went on my vacation to Germany and stuff, I came back with a whole nother Bible, like a Catholic Bible written completely in German, which was like a really fun experience for me. But definitely, like, especially because I do pray the rosary every day and stuff like that, I do bring a rosary with me wherever I go, just because I feel so secure when I walk with it. And also, when I remember it's in my pocket, it reminds me to kind of be better. If I'm off ranting or cussing or doing whatever, God knows what, I'll put my hand in my pocket and I'll feel it, and I'll be like, okay, I should be doing better. It does inspire me to. It does inspire me to be better, and to know that even in like because Peace Corps is not easy. No volunteer will tell you it's easy, but it's also just a good reminder just to like keep your hopes up high. Find your inspiration, and if you have faith, then it help you like use it to your advantage. Know you're not alone, and know that you are a capable person. So definitely, I think stuff like that also just affects my attitude too. Like if I'm having a bad day, which God knows we all have these bad days. It's one of my personal like uses for give me a more positive outlook, give me more motivation to resolve whatever conflict there is, and yeah.
I think that's pretty cool though, because it has a really neat meaning behind it. Trevor's got his rosary with him right now. He's headbanging with it because he's like, "Go Jesus!" But like seriously, yeah, you mentioned you're like, God knows, like, I know there's probably a lot of spiritual people out there who are listening to this, and it's like, like that is cool that you have that connection, and like that's especially the rosary. That's something very manageable that you can bring around with you, and it really demonstrates kind of part of your character. So I think that's neat. You mentioned your trip to Germany, so let's hear about this trip to Germany. I'm so excited about this.
So being pretty much at this point the only German speaking person in my family, it's been a lifelong like up until this point. I ain't lived for no 80 years. I've been wanting to go to Germany for a long time, just to go and see the country, because I'm a huge admirer of the culture and like the landscape and the language and everything else. So the most ironic thing is, it's often made me angry over the years, is that I'm the last person in my immediate family to go to Germany. Actually, my dad was born in Germany. My mother and brother have a boat. I don't know about my brother actually. Now that I think about this, my mother, but most of my family's been to Germany. Yet I'm the only person that speaks German in my family at this point. Even my dad's like forgotten most of his German despite being born there. But I finally managed, using the advantage of like the location and being in Armenia and being so close to Europe. Finally managed get to go to Germany on a pretty cheap flight. Revisit all the exchange students we've hosted. As I mentioned, we were high school exchange hosts. So I finally got to go visit and stay with a bunch of them. Reconnect with a bunch of them. Like I think like the furthest back, our earliest exchange student that's still in Germany right now. I think that was like 5 or 6 years ago. So I got to go reconnect with her. A few people in between. Even the family of our very first exchange student that was from Germany. I got to stay with them, and it was just so cool. Now, when I went, this was right before, like the week before Christmas. So, of course, Christmas markets were still in full swing, and I was so excited to be able to go to those. So like there's like all the Glühwein and all that stuff, plus like holiday German cuisine like Grünkohl, which is like cabbage and sausage and like potato balls with like caramelized sugar on it. It's all so good, I'll tell you what. So I mean, I still look back on the whole experience. I'm still like very thankful to be able to have finally done it. Let's see. I started in Hamburg, which Hamburg's huge. Holy hell! Like yeah, it's pretty huge. I didn't really expect. I mean, I expected it to be huge. I think it's like no, like the second, third, or fourth biggest city in Germany. It's where I flew into. Met like an earlier exchange student. I mentioned earlier we had exchange students that work at admirers of like Southern culture and stuff like that. This student that I went and visit like had his own boots. I think had a belt, and he always like tucked like a plaid shirt into his jeans and like had a cowboy hat and stuff. Like he was definitely very into it. You know, he loved to go fishing and watching football games and whatnot. I think he picks the Crimson Tide. You know, so he sucks. But you know, reconnecting with him and just going around and like experiencing like North German culture was really amazing. Eating the food, drinking the beer, honestly, like everything. You know, just the experience of being there was amazing. It was very beautiful in North Germany, especially like with like the lakes and rivers and whatnot. Christmas markets were, of course, amazing. Glühwein for days. After that, I moved to Bremen. Bremen is where our very first exchange student's family is, and I haven't seen them since they first came over in like 2009 or 2010. So, you know, God knows it's been ages, and it was very nice to be able to reconnect with them. They opened me like, you know, I just seen them yesterday. Like they welcomed me in their house. We were talking, you know, laughing and just having fun. It was all, and then we all went out to eat a few times, and they took me around like their city, like their Christmas market and sightseeing. And I got to like ride a bike in a city for the first time because I haven't, you know, back in America we don't ride bikes, you know. Kids ride bikes until they're 10 years old, then they kind of get over that. They go play Xbox. So, but you know, most of Europe, they ride bikes through their city just to get from point A to point B. So I finally got to try that out. May have gotten in trouble a few times because I think I got on the pedestrian path when I was riding a bike and got some angry German words thrown at me. But overall, I enjoyed it. Also reminded me how out of shape I am. But it was really great. And then actually, this part wasn't decided until like, you know, when I was near the end of my planning process, but I got to go to the Netherlands too. Visit one of our closest exchange students, ones that like my family really connected with. She even shot her first gun with us. It was a blessing and a half. I loved it. And I got to go meet her family and celebrate actual Christmas Day with them, go to Christmas Mass with them and all that stuff. But also just like, you know, celebrating, you know, I never imagined I'd be celebrating Christmas in either Germany or the Netherlands. And just being able to do that was like a really wholesome experience. I really appreciated it. I really appreciated the families and students for hosting me and having me over. After that, I went back to Germany, and then I got to go to Dresden, which is Dresden. I gotta say, like Dresden, I didn't have much expectations about it. Not to say, you know, oh God, I'm going to Dresden. It was more like I don't know anything about Dresden, but it is pretty. Sorry, it is pretty. They have like the really big churches and some like, you know, really awesome. They have like really amazing architecture, and then like right outside, like the exchange student there and I like went hiking for a bit, which it was really nice to be able to go out and get in like German nature and not like in like towns or cities or villages. So it was the whole experience by itself was good. I was ready to come back to Armenia. I mean, I don't mind saying that, you know, right before that, I was a little burnt out on Armenia a little bit. I was just, or not, maybe not burnt out, but ready to go somewhere else, maybe kind of take a break. And definitely with that trip, it was like the perfect release. You know, I went there and everybody by default thought I was German. They came up to me and spoke German to me. Otherwise, you know, here in Armenia, people kind of give me the stares a little bit like, there's a ghost. What is this? Or they'll think I'm from Russia or something like that, and they'll come and speak Russian to me, and they're not convinced when I tell them I'm not from Russia, and they'll keep speaking Russian to me, even though I speak pretty proficient Armenian, I guess. So it was just nice to be able to kind of get that release, and you know, despite never being to Germany before this, it felt so familiar, and I really loved it. You know, being with people that, you know, lived with us, seeing them again. That's like the closest I've been, you know, seen my family in almost a year at this point. So the whole trip altogether was just an absolute like blessing and success. But I'm glad to be back.
That sounds like a really cool trip, especially because you got to go to Germany, part of your heritage in a language that you have so much appreciation for. And you got to do it around like a really neat holiday time. So and like you said, catching up with like old friends and stuff, like that's that's honestly like the best trip. Like you feel like you're going somewhere new, it's fresh, and yet it's still like a very comforting type of situation. Like honestly, like that's the coolest type of travel you can do. Thank you so much, Trevor, for taking the time to sit down, talk a little bit about your background, talk about some of the travel opportunities you've had, the various languages that you speak, which is I think is so cool. And because we got into some of the Southernisms, I think there's no more proper way to end this than with a mighty fine yeehaw. So do you think you can do that for me? And like I'm gonna do one and see how it sounds, and then like they're gonna hear my like northern accent, and then it's gonna be like Alabama yeehaw. So let's we gotta end this in fashion. So I'm gonna give it one. So okay. Here we go. So yeehaw! All right, I know that was bad, but let's hear it, Trevor. Let's hear it.
I wonder. First of all, do I need to back away from the mic when I do this?
Yeah.
We're about 3/5 away from the mic, or at least from this little cool thing that's around the mic. I don't know. Also, y'all, give Matt some credit for putting these podcasts together. It's really incredible. And then I guess there's nothing left to do but yeah!
Hey, thank you so much again to Trevor for sitting down, talking with me about just all of the things he has going on in his life, travel-wise, work-wise, Peace Corps. It was so cool, and I hope you guys enjoyed the conversation with him as much as I did when we did that recording. I love to keep conversations going not only with my guests but with the listeners. So the topic of conversation this week was things that you bring with you on every trip. And if you want to get going with that conversation, I'd love to hear what are some of those interesting items that you guys can't leave at home whenever you're out and about. So with me, it was tap shoes. With Trevor, it's either his rosary, or for some reason when we're hiking and doing absolutely crazy things like that away from sight, he's bringing his Bible, but good for him. But what are interesting things that you always bring with you on every trip? And you can go ahead and shoot me an email at whereintheworldismatt@hotmail.com. Comment in the comment section on YouTube, or you can send me a personalized Facebook message. We have the Where in the World is Matt on account on Facebook. So whatever is most convenient for you guys, I'd love to hear back from you guys. And again, thank you so much to all of the listeners who have been providing feedback, comments about the podcast, kind of giving me ways to reshape, retool, this type of experience. I respect all of those comments, and I hope you notice that I'm definitely taking all of it into consideration. So thank you so much for taking the time out of your day to sit down, listen to another awesome interview, and I hope to hear more from you guys in the future. So this wraps up another month of the Where in the World podcast, and I will see you guys again in April. Fingers crossed there won't be any snow that time.